When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do. Walt Disney. Welcome to Deep Dive Creatives, a podcast that explores the creative process. I'm David McGinnis, your fearless host of Deep Dive Creatives. If you take a moment to hit that subscribe or follow button, that helps to promote the podcast and lets you know when the next episode is available. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to learn what your definition of creativity is. Meet Steve Gehlen.
My relationship with creativity is a long and complicated one.
Steve has always had a wide range of interests growing up, and upon entering college, he continued to pursue those interests.
Started focusing on film and television in college, and discovered computers in college, and that became a parallel area of focus that later converged when digital media and the internet came along, and then my career became digital marketing, digital commerce, digital transformation. So a lot of the creativity happened there.
Steve has led digital teams at a variety of companies like Nike, Pendelton, OHSU, Costal Farm Ranch, and he currently heads up a team at Wilco. Well, I've known Steve for, more years than I'd probably like to admit in this video. Over the years, we've been involved in several creative endeavors, such as playing in a bluegrass band. We wrote a screenplay together, and I helped Steve create a documentary that he produced titled One for the Arts. Steve is also the founder of organizations that promote creativity, like the Internet Strategy Forum, Keeping the Arts, and Oregon Creative Industries. He also produced a number of events that celebrate and inspire creativity.
Became involved in producing events like a music festival, and then later the Portland Creative Conference. And that's when I started to do a lot of thinking about the creative process and was reading about it, finding speakers to talk about it and coaching them on how to talk about it.
Well, as Steve unpacks his ideas about technology, generative artificial intelligence, and his own creative process, I'm convinced you will be challenged and encouraged as you venture down your own wild path of creativity. Let's dive in.
So when I think about how I define creativity, I have to separate it into two parts. So part one is, what do I think creativity is as a consumer of creative works? And what's the value of that, of creativity in the creative process? And the second part is, how do I define creativity as a creator myself of various types of creative works? So for the first part, I would define creativity as part of what makes us uniquely human. It's part of what we can celebrate about humanity, and it's part of part of what I think makes life worth living, along with loving relationships. And by that I mean there's a certain set of emotions that I've always been able to get as a consumer of creative works that I can't access any other way, or that's very difficult to access any other way. So, when I listen to a piece of music, a song that resonates with me, there's joy that I get for that I can't find that same joy any other way than listening to music. And same with movies and TV, and I don't mean always positive. It could be like sad or, whatever that emotional range is. Creative works, and it just makes it come alive, at least for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people. So as a consumer of creative works, I just think it's incredibly important to our past, present, and future as humans all trying to get along and live an enjoyable life. And that's just hugely important. For part two, how do I define creativity as a producer of creative works. I think because there's variety in my creative works, I'll just talk about a specific example. So this this idea of creativity from like you decide what you want to do, and that you want to do something, and that's sort of like the first creation is, what do I want to do? That's in my head. That creation is in my head. Then how do I know that I've manifested that in physical reality as sort of the second creation, which is first in my head, now it's out there in the world. How do I know that, okay, I can let that go and move on? And so the example that kind of came to mind quickly was a song that I wrote back in high school, actually. And at that time, my father and I would watch the TV show Hee Haw on a weekly basis. It was one of the dad and son things we did. And on Hee Haw, they had a segment where they sang a 4-part harmony gospel song. And I just thought that I just looked forward to that segment every time. And I just thought, I love harmony for whatever reason. I just love vocal harmony. And we were doing vocal harmony in the bluegrass band. And that's one thing I really liked about it. And then I thought, well, what if I want to write a song that's like a gospel song they sing on Hee Haw, 4-part harmony gospel song, just write it from scratch. It doesn't exist yet. And so I set out to, that was the goal, and with a specific outcome in my head, and I had a model for it. So a lot of times as a creative, there's a model, like that painting or that book or that movie, or, what is my kind of, I want to do something like that. And so then, first came the chord. No, first came the lyric. And so I was just thinking about, what's resonated with me in my upbringing, Catholic upbringing. What resonated with me was like Jesus as a role model. And so I just thought that's giving us, and I had another role model. It was Walt Disney. So I kind of had Jesus and Walt Disney. Those are my two role models when I was growing up that weren't my parents or relatives. And so, I started thinking about, he defined this sort of path, this sort of way forward through life. So I came up with this phrase, follow in his way, which became the title of the song. So, okay, like check, it's got a gospel theme. Okay, like that's the first thing you need in a gospel song. And so then, what rhymes with way, and so the chorus evolved first, and then the verses, and then I think the chord structure came after the chorus, and needed to be very bluegrass friendly in the key of G, which means banjo friendly, and so 5-string banjo friendly. And so when I had the verses done, the chorus done, and took it to the band. And when the band started rehearsing it, and we worked out our 4 parts, and it sounded like Hee Haw gospel, that's when I knew that, like, okay, check, we can move on.
If we will just follow in His
For me, the creative process, it starts in an interesting way, I think, and it starts with a challenge or a question to myself that is in the phrase, literally in my head. I like, let's see if I can X or create X. And this has happened to me over and over throughout my life. It's just I challenge myself to do something that I haven't done before. And it seems hard, and because I don't quite know the path forward on that. Every creative work to me happens twice, and I'm not the only one who says that, right? In Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, he says everything happens twice, once in your head and then once in physical reality. And he wasn't the first person to say that. I thought about this in the musical The Music Man, which came out in the late 50s. The main character, Harold Hill, used the think system to teach his kids about music. Now, that was a comedic device because he was a con man and he didn't know how to teach kids about music. So he just said, kids, first you need to think the minuet in G before you can play it. That was meant to be funny, but it's really true. And then now we know this is, athletes are trained this way. You visualize it first. So to me, the creative works happen twice. And then my creative process, once when they form in my head, once when they become a reality. So, the challenge, the way I learned that I could meet those challenges, when I was 10 years old, my home team won the state basketball championship, and I was there, and I was in the crowd with the high school students, even though I was 10. And at the end of the game, buzzer goes off, and everyone had this confetti ready. It was this confetti made of cut up newspaper strips. And I just can picture it literally right now in my head. This confetti goes up and it's floating around, and everyone's happy, just joyous. We won the state championship in basketball. And at that point, I thought to myself, I want to do that. Like, I want to be out on that court and win the state championship. I want to make people feel like this, or help make people feel like this. And fast forward to 9 years later, that happened. And so in reality, and so when I was a senior in high school, so that's when I realized, oh my gosh, like I wanted that 9 years ago, and now I got it. How does that work? And so that's when I learned that if I challenge myself to something, let's see if I can write a gospel song like on Hee Haw. Let's see if I can create the first website for a global brand, even though I've never done it before. Let's see if I can bring back the Portland Creative Conference. Let's see if I can write a screenplay or co-write one. Let's see if I can direct a live theater production, etc. And so this is how it always starts. It's let's see if I can. And it's interesting I say let's, which leads to something I want to talk about later, which is co-creation. But that's how it starts. So then it like formulates into like, what is the specifics of that? And then it starts into the execution phase and all that magic that happens in the middle between when you first want to do something in your head and you can see it or feel it or both, and then it actually happens, is that the creative process is that magic in the middle, all that stuff that happens, that collaboration, that like dead ends that you pull back and try a different route. I mean, that's to me the creative process is from that idea to that end result in physical manifestation. And what is that magic, and who all and what all are you co-creating with that with? My favorite part of the creative process is the journey. And I love the journey. And so most of the books that I read or listen to, most of the documentaries I watch, they're about the same core concept, which is how did this creative work get made? So most of my reading is movies, television, theater, music, radio, mass media, internet, technology, the history of how the industry evolved and progressed, as well as specific people and specific works. So right now I'm reading The Making of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The number of making of books for music, for movies and TV shows I've read is like really high. So I'm fascinated by the process, regardless of the media. The only media I don't really know very much about is still art and sculpture, like those fine arts, which is ironic because my father-in-law knows almost everything about it. I know most nothing, but every other media, name a media, I'll know, I'll have kind of studied it. And it's entertaining. Like, that's enjoyable to me, to read about the creative process. It's just, where did it start? Who are the people around you? Like, you can trace these happenings like to certain locations where certain people just got together and talked to each other. Laurel Canyon in Southern California and the whole 60s folk rock came right out of that group of people. And that's happened all over the world, all throughout history. And As far as inspirations for creativity, there's some business books that I really admire, and I've developed in my career, which is digital marketing, digital commerce, digital transformation for companies like brands and retailers. And like there's certain approaches that I've developed that work across different companies and industries, and so I've got a book in mind. And so I've got the title, I won't say it, but I've got it, so I know, and I kind of know what the chapters are going to be. So that's right now. Let's see if I can write a book. So a business book. And so that won't be for probably a few more years, but that's an example. Like a lot of people, my mentors come from people I actually know and interact with, as well as people that I know their work, but I don't get to interact with them. And so, as far as those sort of people that are out there that I wouldn't interact with, but have inspired me in multiple ways, Walt Disney is one of those, and there's reasons beyond just the creative work. There's things he did to innovate in technology and how that applied to creativity that I want to talk about. But so to me, technology and creativity have always kind of gone together, and I think Walt Disney inspired that. George Lucas was another inspirational external person for me. As far as like in-person people I have interacted with, arts teachers, specifically two music teachers, were very influential on me as mentors and people who taught me things about music and about life that I just continue to apply and proliferate and value. I know some of the other people are just book authors. Like there's an author, Donald Miller, who wrote a business book that basically takes marketing and maps it onto screenplay structure. And as someone who worked in both, like, why didn't I think of that before? So that book has been very influential. So he is an author, and I've read a few other of his books. As with every creative work or effort, there's always going to be challenges. Well, if it's big enough, right? There's typically can be these challenges, obstacles. Anytime you work with more than one person, there's that. Even though you get along really well, there's always going to be like, everyone's got differences in approach, in opinions. Nothing's right or wrong. That's just the way it is, and you work through it together. So some of those obstacles just come in collaboration or challenges. Some of those obstacles come in resources. You don't have the money, you don't have the time, you don't have the right people, and some of those challenges come just because either you haven't done this before, so you're not quite sure of the way forward, or it's never been done before. And so for me, for whatever reason, I think it comes from my father, there's the concept of perseverance is, I think, key when it comes to creative work. If you have that, starting with that idea where it's first created in your head, to get to that physical reality, that finish line, so to speak, you have to, in order to weather those obstacles, those ups and downs, A, you have to believe in your vision, and then B, you have to have perseverance. And that's, to me, the two keys that I've worked on. I always believed in that original, let's see if I can do this, and here's what it's going to be. That's strong enough to carry through myself and my collaborators through those inevitable ups and downs. And when talking about failure somewhere within the creative process as a producer or a collaborator, which is mostly the case, is collaboration. I think that perseverance, let's say that perseverance and stick to your vision and get through the ups and downs, it just isn't working. You run out of time or money or ideas, or your idea just didn't quite work out. So to me, luckily, it hasn't happened a lot, because maybe it's because I don't aim for the stars, you know what I mean? I never wanted to, let's see if I can make a feature film. I obviously have failed at that if I ever thought about that. I did want to make feature films when I was a kid, but then later it became other things. But the things that let's see if I can do this, got the idea, started it, and it didn't work out. There's this period of like, it's very challenging, just mentally, it's like, oh, I should have found a way to make this work, or sometimes it's like, and that this doesn't last too long for me, but sometimes it's someone else's fault, right? And so there's, regardless of how you got there, it's a period of mourning, like you're like, this didn't work out. But then there's so many other things to try and do and learn that it doesn't last. I start getting on the next thing. And behind that, I'm an optimist. And I tend to just see the good in things and in people. And I also got that, I think, from my parents. I just try to go through life with a positive attitude. And that helps as well. You're not like just hanging out down here. You're like, no, I live up here. I'm not supposed to be down here. I live here. So. Related to my philosophy or how I think about the creative process itself, it's a really fun topic for me and one, I guess, close to my heart in a way. And because of my prior experience, which includes producing the Portland Creative Conference for, I guess, 15 years or something, and booking creative speakers, coaching them on how to talk about their creative process. So I've done a lot of thinking and reading and viewing about the creative process. And I kind of, my own philosophy or take on it, I think of it as a co-creation, even though we don't really use that term a lot. It's a co-creation with God or the universe, however you want to frame it up, with this consciousness that's out there that you can connect with. And so that's part of it, like manifesting, and it relates, there's quantum physics in there, that relate to how consciousness impacts physical reality. And there's co-creation with your collaborators. So that's a big part of the fun for me. I was big into team sports, and I'm big into creative works where I work with other people, and plays and theater, live theater, music, screenwriting, the collaboration, and so that's the fun. Is that kind of all that co-creation? It's just magic. When you go from someone's idea, and we do it as humans all the time. My brother's an architect. The concept of going from like an idea of a building to a drawing of a building to actually building a building and everything that goes into that, that's huge. That's a huge creative process. And it's just like, it's, how you get there to me is what's important. And so that's my philosophy, is it's really more about the journey than the end result. Because the end result, people are either going to like it or not, or you're going to either like it or not. But if you have fun and enjoy and add value to your community through the process, I think that's a big part of it. Are there threats to creativity right now? I think that one challenge for certain forms of creativity is the reduction in attention spans. And, we've seen that happen over the years. Technology is a driver of that, definitely. Social media, as applied to some technology, is part of that. So we've seen that attention spans in generations are reducing. So that's a threat to longer form work, like movies and books. So I do think in some ways that's a threat. It's a threat kind of from the demand side, not from the creation side. So you can have a threat from the creation side, threat from the demand side. So let's talk about a threat to the creation side that I read about recently. So Netflix is a big producer of creative output, movies and TV and games. And so they've got a lot of money. And so they've been funding a lot of creative work. Now that's put a lot of people in employment. That's great. That's a plus. Some good movies and TV shows, some bad movies and TV shows, but either way, somebody got paid to work on that. So that's a good thing, employment, right? But, and the creators got to create. So a showrunner, maybe they would have had to wait a long time for a network show to come up again. They can do an 8-episode series on Netflix, right? And they can do more of those. So that enables creativity. The threat is an example of a threat from Netflix is that I was reading the other day about how Netflix, recognizing that some consumers are doing dual screen, so they have a Netflix program running on the TV, but they also have a tablet or mobile phone, and they're doing both. And Netflix knows that's based on research or whatever, they're doing both. And so I read that some producers of Netflix movies got feedback that their script was not dual screen friendly. And what that meant was that the writer was asked to do more exposition. Explain to the viewer that thing again. Because they might not have been paying attention 15 minutes ago when you first introduced that concept. Now that's a creative threat to that writer and that writer's ability. And writers always get rewritten, but and then that changes when it goes into production. But writers can still have ownership of a framework and certain devices and storytelling that have worked for years. Now you introduce this new device. Hey, say that what you said again. Have it maybe same character, different character. But remember, somebody might not have been paying attention 15 minutes ago. That's a threat. Is AI a threat to creativity? My quick answer is no. But I want to talk about how I got to know and why I think the answer is no right now. I think it's useful to put AI, so let's specifically talk about generative AI, which is what's impacting and assisting creative output. To put generative AI in the context of the history of how technology and creativity have interacted. And so if you look at it and the evolution of a parallel evolution of creativity and technology, technology has impacted creativity in two main ways. One, enabled new things to be created, and two, enabled new ways for people to see or experience creative works. So there's creation and distribution. And so technology has always impacted creativity. So in some ways, this Gen AI is no different. In some ways it is different, I'll talk about that. But let's just take Walt Disney as one example. So Walt Disney, everyone knows the work, everyone's seen the movies, the TV programs, the theme parks. But what not everyone knows about is how technology impacted Walt and how he worked with it and used it to create new things and new opportunities and new creative works. So just a few examples. So multi-track audio. So he innovated with multi-track audio. That's a technology, enabled certain things, overlapping dialogue. It set multiple tracks, right? Background, sound effects, etc., dialogue, music, and then multi-plane camera. So he and his team invented the multi-plane camera, which made different cells of animation show in different focal depths as the camera was shooting through those various cells, multi-plane. And so that enabled a look to animation that no one had achieved before. Was that a threat? No, it was an enabler. And so, and then audio animatronics, which is kind of early robotics. So for his theme park, he innovated in audio animatronics to create characters, animals and humans like Abraham Lincoln. He created an experience where they moved and talked, etc. So again, a creative output that he couldn't have done without the technology innovation. Distribution, same thing. I mean, a lot of movie studios were threatened by TV. Walt saw TV as an opportunity, a new channel of distribution to get his creative works into the home to consumers and in new formats. And so what did he do? He used a television show, which is genius. He pitched ABC on this idea to help pay for a television show. And what's the television show do? It promotes his theme park in Los Angeles, Disneyland, which no one had done a theme park like that before. He's using a new technology of distribution to promote yet another new creative work. So that's what I mean. Technology has always impacted creativity. And that's just one person, but that's the case. So if you look at back to the creative process, an idea to a manifestation, and then there's all that magic and collaboration that happens in between. The difference between other technologies and generative AI is that, and why it's caused a bit of a kind of a, in some ways, an existential crisis for creativity, is because it's the first time that technology has been able to remove that middle part. So you go from the idea, which is a prompt. In AI, your idea is you just type it out in words, just like you're saying it to yourself in your head. And the technology creates an output almost immediately. And so that's the difference. And that's why I believe that's why people are, even though they may not know it, that's what kind of scares them about AI, generative AI. So, but I believe that people are going to know that there's soul in creative outputs. And I believe that people are going to somehow, even though they don't know it consciously, but subconsciously, they're going to know the difference between a soulless work and a work that had some soul in co-creation with it. So I believe that generative AI is a tool. It's a different kind of tool. But if you think about like Photoshop, like if you're a designer and you were designing with pencil and pen, or and then you start designing on a computer, but then you get a tool that can all of a sudden do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, like Photoshop or Illustrator. Did that take away some people's jobs? Probably. Did those people evolve? Probably. Did anybody freak out? Oh, probably, but we didn't hear too much about it. But it became a tool in the toolkit of a designer. And those became invaluable tools. And it's how work was done after a while. And so then there's Canva, which made it even easier and brought along templates that someone else created. And now you can shortcut even more by choosing a template, and Canva just made it even easier. Did that reduce some billable rates of some designers, etc.? Probably. Did all designers go away? No. Right? And so now we have this other evolution for any creative to work with. And so I believe it's a tool for co-creation. So I think what's going to happen, even though we didn't call creativity co-creativity, now I think that's a good sort of word to bring into the vernacular, is we're going to co-create with generative AI. That's why I don't think it's a threat. Here's a really interesting thing. We were on vacation last week, and my son was there with my wife and I for a while because he came over to our resort, just a drive for him. And so he likes to go to thrift stores. And so we went to this thrift store that is like benefits senior citizens. And so we're looking at things, and I usually look at the books there or the movies or whatever, or the electronics. And he looks at the clothes. My wife looks at the kitchen stuff. And so I was in looking at the books, and my son comes in, and he's looking at the books too. And he goes, "Oh, here." And he pulled one out himself, and he handed it to me. He said, "This looks like you might be interested in it." And it's called Digital Mantras. Digital Mantras was written in the mid-90s, and by this guy. He unfortunately passed away. I did some research on him when he was 43. He passed away. I think it was. Anyway, he wrote this book in the mid-90s. He's an academic. It's kind of, but he was very prescient, and his book was about the impact of technology on creativity. And I told David, I said, and I bought the book. And I started reading it, and then I put it into a AI engine because it's available publicly. It's public domain. It's a PDF. So I'm processing it now through a generative AI notebook LM, so I can ask questions of the book, which is a whole other topic. Anyway, the book is about the impact that the computers have, and more importantly, will have on creative works. And it's written from a engineering, technical and creative. He's got both right and left brain stuff going on. And his core premise was boil it down, which is why I want to post to LinkedIn about this, is that boiling it down, what the reason AI is working the way it is, and he only barely mentions AI in the mid-90s. I mean, there was work going on for decades in AI before the last few years when everyone else heard about it. It's a result of decades of research and many breakthroughs. But he said in the mid-90s, 94, I think, that the reason computers will have a major role in creativity and creative works is because you can structure all creative works. And he mentioned Kandinsky, who I don't know, but the artist, he did work on like categorizing colors and things like that. I'm going to probably misquote it. And then the Schoenberg, the musician, he did work on categorizing how music works, like 12-tone musicality. So you can structure creative works. Even though it seems free-flowing, like music, everyone knows if you're good at music, you're probably good at math, right? There's a relationship because there's structure in music. And so you can structure and define creative works. Well, then what he says is, okay, A, you can structure creative work. Then he says, B, computers are good at manipulating structures, like sets of numbers, right? Which is all AI is. It's working with creative elements boiled down to mathematics. You're representing everything as a number, a series of numbers. And that's how computers do it because they're good at working with those bits, right? And so he says, all creative work can be structured. All creative output can be structured. Music, movies, etc. Computers are good at manipulating structure. Therefore, his thesis is computers will have a major role in creativity in the mid-90s. So it was happening then. There was work, there was computer art, crude computer art, computer music, happening then, but it wasn't everybody in major impact, but he knew it would be, and that's why 1 + 1 = 2. So you can structure creative works. Computers are really good at manipulating structure. Therefore, computers will play a major role in creative works. And so that was fascinating. And it explains why you can create an image from a prompt or a story in words from a prompt or a screenplay or whatever. Because the generative AI, large language model, has been trained on the history of human creativity. Yeah. And so where's God in that image or that story? It's there. It's derivative. It's a machine's idea of what we are talking about. The machine doesn't always get it right. We know sometimes that if we're talking about and it's right or not. Actually, let me take that back. If we are a domain expert in that topic, we know. If we're not, we don't know. But it's built on us. And it's us doing that output in a new way. How do we work with that and co-create with it? That's kind of what we're figuring out. So when I think about potential words of encouragement for someone that might be listening or viewing and they're feeling stuck or unfulfilled in their creative work, to me it's about the variety that's out there, both as a consumer and as a producer. So maybe it's try something slightly different or start small. And there's also this whole other way we can learn now and learn new skills, YouTube videos, generative AI engines and chat bots, just like learning new things it's almost like we haven't quite got there, but there's that scene in The Matrix where Neo, they put in a cartridge and Neo learns a new, Asian fighting style. It's like, we aren't quite there yet, but we can learn things pretty quickly as far as new processes, I've never knitted, but I could probably learn how to knit fairly quickly now. And so I think that's, a potential source of inspiration too, is just learning something new.